Welcome back to Making Records with Eric Valentine. I gotta apologize straight away for my voice. I'm losing it. Definitely, fending off something. There's just a constant parade of viruses that come into the Valentine house via our 5-year-old. It's a never-ending onslaught of viruses. I just got hit with two at the same time. So my son had two at the same time. He got the norovirus, which is like a stomach thing. That's fun. But then also had whatever this thing is that I have now, which is like going after my lungs and my throat and everything. So I'm gonna try. We'll see how I do. I hope my voice is listenable for this little bit. I don't have to talk a huge amount for these little sort of glimpses into our lives, trying to get this barn studio thing built. So this episode, this is a short one. This was a moment along the way where we had taken off for a period of time. I forget what it was. We were probably gone for 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. Mom was out doing shows. I was out there with her helping out, and then got to come back and see a whole bunch of cool new progress, that had happened while we were gone. And it was just exciting to see, all the stuff that had happened while we were gone. There was like all this, reinforcement that had to be put in because they took out the second floor, and the second floor was really important to make sure that the roof doesn't, fall down. So they put in these big steel I-beams to make it so they can't spread apart, So they put that in, and then you can see these, I put these wedges on the wall. I had them frame those in. So in the long throw of the room, there were, a lot of wall surface that would be parallel and would create, all kinds of flutter echoes and stuff. And so we, had these wedges put in. I'm basically copying what was told to me that is sort of like a Bill Putnam rule of thumb. He built a bunch of amazing sounding recording rooms, and I believe it was Studio One at Ocean Way. Okay, what then became Cello, which is now East West, which is now probably changed again. I can't keep up with it. But the big room there had this kind of treatment to it. And when I asked about it at the time, they explained what I just said, and that the rule of thumb was 1 foot of excursion for every 10 feet of wall that you're trying to eliminate a flutter with. And so I used that rule and added these wedges on the walls to try and eliminate that. So you'll see those framed in there. There's no sheetrock up yet. It's still just framing. There's no doors. And not long after this, we actually used that space to record some stuff, just with like a little mobile setup, and recorded a whole like live streaming thing. And so, with no doors on and all kinds of stuff. So still managing to make use of the space even before it's, has doors. So there's that's basically it. We come back and you can hear Grace and I just sort of pontificating about figuring out all of these little detail things. It's really was interesting in this process. You think sort of in general terms initially about what you're going to do. And, there's going to be a room and there'll be air conditioning and all this stuff. But then there's a certain point where all these details show up where you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, are these ducks going to run into the skylights? Like, how do we fit around that? And, it's just amazing how complicated it gets. And so this was very early on in us trying to like pin some of that stuff down. And, and just like still sort of, broad brush planning stuff, how we're going to, try and finish out this room. At this point, we'd sort of made the transition that we're going to commit to it being more of a recording space and not so much, early on we're thinking it would be more an even dual use between having live music events there. The room is potentially big enough to do that. You could fit maybe 300 people in there. And splitting it between the two, but you know, we decided let's really, you know, commit more to it being a recording space. And so that's when the booths got added on the far side. You can see those. You'll hear us talk about those and some of the things that were still being considered of how to finish those up. So you can hear that whole process. So here you go, check it out.
Hi Eric Valentine, what's going on?
We're checking out all the amazing work that was done on the amazing room. That's
Yes.
like the biggest sound room I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
You know? So just check this out. Look at that steel. Look at the steel.
I'm so into the steel beams in the Vermont barn. It's like, I mean, that's
Yeah, it's just
the
powerful.
antichrist of a Vermont barn, and that's so rock and roll.
It's powerful.
I am Iron Man. Sha-da-da-do-down, bow, 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 bow.
There's gonna be ducts
Yeah.
that go all the way along the ridge.
I haven't really thought about this upper area above those planks because I had to give up on the way that the carpentry looks. I think we just close it. What do you think?
Yeah, we could just cap along there.
I mean, I don't want to, but it's not like it's beautiful carpentry, you know?
I mean, it wasn't really set up that way. But I think, yeah, so 2 ducts come across the entire ridge line.
And even if they are exposed, that's fine.
Yeah, it would just be kind of a cool industrial look, you know?
I mean, now with the steel, as sexy as it is, I just want more metal in this place.
Yeah.
More metal, more concrete. Wood, we know what that does. Mm-hmm. And then are you gonna wrap all these in plywood when?
This stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, these should probably have some.
They should look better.
Yeah, they should look more like timber. These are worth wrapping.
Or we wrap them and try and make them look more like steel.
Yeah.
Might be easier to do that. I mean, like you get some linoleum that matches the steel rust color.
Right. We could get some thin sheets, you know, of steel.
I mean, we're gonna maybe do the outside of the barn that way.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I mean, not they would be flat, but.
You don't want corrugated metal inside your studio?
No.
Daddy, but it's sound diffusing.
Right.
Isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. It's not flat.
Oh my God, Eric. How do you feel seeing this thing come together in this?
It's very satisfying.
Yeah.
It's very, very satisfying to like say you're gonna do something and then actually really fucking do it.
Yeah.
You know? It feels incredibly satisfying. So yeah, I say, you know, we put the ducts in that go all the way across there. And then we just have to choose our places where it's gonna come down. And so when it's air conditioning, what would happen is, you know, so there's the main feeds and then there'll be a branch that comes along and it would go just run inside some of these rafters. So when the branch comes along, there would be one that comes down, which would be for air conditioning. And so you have a vent above that's blowing cold air down into the room.
In the center of the room, or?
It would have to be, you know, like at least 2 places.
I was gonna say it'd be smarter to not do it where the doors are in the summer. So as far
Sure, yeah.
from
We
where
just
the
have to
doors
make
are.
it distributed along, you know.
Would you do separate ones inside the vocal and drum booth?
Yeah, and so, you know, the main feeds would go all the way down, and there would be, you know, a vent that goes inside each booth. Mm-hmm. And actually, probably for the AC, it can just be a tiny little nub, and so I think the vent can be this high up because the cold air is going to come down, right? But then, because I don't want to have like a big thing coming down that blocks your sight line. And if it's just a vent that's way up here, it won't be in the sight line. But then that branch continues on and goes down the wall, and then down near the floor, there'd be another vent down there. So when the system is doing heat, it'll blow heat out down there. Because then the heat rises.
How does it feel to be dealing with cold and hot after being in California for the last 50 years?
Yeah, the only thing we need in California is air conditioning in the studio. And then check it out. See in the booths there? There's an option of putting a ceiling in the booth.
See, I'm thinking like crazy hidden high ceiling secret light fixture that's just like the person in there has their magic space where they look up and there's just like magical things happening.
So should it go all the way to this, but there's just a lighting feature
Well,
in there?
I don't know how that does for acoustics with the drums.
I don't know either, but in general, I think having more air volume will be better. So
yeah,
just
that would be my
leaving it open
instinct is
all
like
the
if
way.
you have all that vertical space, use it.
Yeah, cool.
You know?
Yeah, and so then there would just be a lighting fixture that's just, you know,
Yeah, like a
floating
crazy
down.
cool light fixture, you
Yeah.
know? All right, we gotta go.
Yeah. All right, so there you have it. Us just hashing it out, trying to figure it out there. There's, you know, some interesting stuff. There's the an ongoing debate between Grace and I. She is, you know, more agreeable with corrugated metal. I am not, so that's why she was kind of like, you know, poking at me with that. And you know, I talked a little bit about the air conditioning and heating system in there. That was very complicated in this place because the whole building is only electric. It's there's going to be no fossil fuels on the building at all, and when you're trying to heat, you know, that becomes a challenge. And so, you know, really, what would have been ideal in that big room is radiant heat in the floor. Except that, you know, there was already an existing concrete floor, so you potentially have to tear that out and re-pour the whole floor with a whole radiant heat system. And then, you know, ultimately, I couldn't find anybody in Vermont that was like, you know, had a radiant heat system that was electric. So I think you really need the kind of energy that you get from a fossil fuel to be able to heat the water enough and really maintain that in that big space. So could not do radiant heat in there, which would have been, you know, ideal because it would be quiet in the room. But then I would in the summer I would still need to have a ducted air conditioning system in there because you know, and air conditioning is all forced air. So I was going to have to put in a ducted system anyway, so I was like, screw it. We'll do both heat and air conditioning with a ducted system. And I'm just going to do everything I can to try and minimize the, you know, the noise intrusion of it. And so all of that equipment is, you know, mounted inside a soundproof, basically its own room. And it still isn't fully buttoned up yet, and it's still a little loud. It's making me a little nervous so far. But you know, it's just something that we'll have to work on until we get it right. I think even in the best studios that I've ever been in, you know, I think I mentioned recently I was at RCA, Studio A, in Nashville, and they have an air conditioning system in there, and when that thing turns on, you can hear it, you know, and that was like, you know, unlimited resources to make that as good as possible, but there's still definitely a very, very noticeable low rumble. And when I was recording some of the really quiet stuff, some of the Nickel Creek stuff, where everybody is just barely, you know, touching their instruments, like that stuff really reveals itself, you know. And so, you know, the benefit of doing it as forced air is like you can, you know, kind of turn it on when you need it and turn it off in key moments if you need to. And I'll probably use just some spot electric radiant heaters in the room in places, you know, right where musicians are, so they can have some heat on them if it's really cold in there and we can't run the ducted system the whole time, just to kind of offset it a little bit. So there'll be some solutions for it. You know, we'll figure it out. But man, it's challenging stuff. You know, it's, you know, there's a lot of electrical in this place because all the heating and air conditioning is being done with electrical, and obviously all the lighting and all the equipment and all that stuff. I mean, the equipment and the lighting is like nothing compared to all of the climate control in there. That is all, you know, everything that's going to be used in that place. And to offset that, there are a bunch of solar panels. I had this perfect south-facing roof where we could put a ton of solar panels up there, and make electricity to help try and cover this thing. And they finally got connected just like a couple months ago, and the preliminary numbers on it look very good. I mean, there's a lot of panels. It's like 80 panels up there, and so when it's sunny out, even in the winter, when it's sunny out and there is no snow on the roof, it definitely generates more than it uses. And so, and in Vermont, they have this net metering system, and so they basically look at the whole year as a whole, and just offset what you generated versus what you use, because the seasons are so dramatically different. They can't really, do it day by day or month by month, because in the winter you generate a fraction of what you do in the summer. There's like a 5 or 6 hour difference in the length of the day. I didn't have that as much as California. It's pretty crazy. And so we're trying. I'm trying to make it so more forward thinking, and try and do it all with electricity, and try and not be a burden on the planet here. Do my best to do that. Looks good so far with the solar panels. I kind of talked about it a little bit, but I didn't get really into the details of how the system works. So the ducted system, there's 2 main ducts that come in. There's 2 actual units that are independent. One handles the left side, one handles the right side. Ducts come down along the way. I explained that there'd be, and we ended up doing this. So there's one that shoots down, and there's remote controlled dampers, because these things are so high up. They're almost 30 feet in the air. You can't just go up there and adjust them. And so they're little motorized dampers. So when you select heat, the damper for the duct that's up high gets closed, and the damper for the duct that feeds down to ground level, down at the floor, that floor level, gets opened up. So the heat will get fed all the way down to the floor and blow out across the floor. So you'll actually feel the heat before it all goes 30 feet up to the roof. It's just there's no getting around that. I may ultimately add some fans just to try and circulate the heat in there, and try and make it more uniform. Because right now, when you go up to that mezzanine level, it's always anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees warmer up there than it is down on the floor. So that's just how it works, And you hear us talking about those booths, and Grace, there was an option of dropping a roof in there, and ultimately we've left it open. And so the booth is a relatively small footprint, but it goes way up. I mean, it goes almost all the way 30 feet up. They're at the side, so the A-frame ceiling starts to diminish the overall roof height, but it's probably a good 25 feet up. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually ends up sounding. It could be really cool. I might actually have one be more dry and controlled, and then leave one really open, so you could have one that's really, almost like a reverb chamber, and you could put an amp in there, put something in there that really wants to have all that, splashy energy to it. So we'll see. It's all stuff that's going to get figured out. So, so that's it. I hope that was interesting. It's just us kind of, pontificating about what we're going to try and do. I think next episode is going to be some wiring stuff. If I'm looking at my list here, yep, there's wiring going on. So I will see you in the world of wiring. Bye.